Okay, welcome to day 2 of Danger Earthquakes. Now, this is actually incorrect. Mr. B forgot the end of this, but what I want to talk to you about today is the importance of remembering what you read. Now, boys and girls, the human brain is an incredible thing, but very, very few of us can remember every single thing that we hear or read. But it's really important that we remember as much as we can. So, a lot of you smarty pantses yesterday, the second that Mr. B said, I'm going to read this book to you in 3 parts, a whole bunch of your brains did this. You made a tree map in your head and you were thinking, okay, I'm going to learn about earthquakes, and for 3 days, I'm going to learn. And this is what I want to help you with. Now, this doesn't mean we're just going to learn 3 things about earthquakes, but your brain has to be able to make larger groups to categorize and think about what it was that you learned. So, right now, I want you to just think about our reading yesterday. If you were going to fill in this thinking map, what would you do right here? Pause the video and think about it just for a second. Now, when I think back on yesterday's reading, I remember that it introduced me to just how incredibly powerful earthquakes are. Remember, they showed us all of those pictures of those incredible buildings falling over. And that, as soon as I remembered that the reading was mostly about how powerful earthquakes were, I remembered 2 details. I remembered that they taught me 2 scales scientists use for measuring earthquakes. The Richter scale, remember, which goes from 1 to 10, and the Richter scale is how strong earthquakes are, and the Mercalli scale, which goes from 1 to 12, and the Mercalli scale is how much got destroyed. So you see how by just remembering the main idea of yesterday was how powerful and destructive earthquakes can be, and that helped my mind remember these little details. So I strongly encourage you to certainly do this in your brain, but a lot of us grown-ups will get a piece of paper when we read a new text and we start mapping out what we've learned. Now let's go back. We ended on this absolutely incredible picture of the world in the Ring of Fire. So today, what I want you to do as I read to you, I want you to be thinking about what's the basic main idea of day 2 reading. Just take a sec to turn the page here. Here we go. Most earthquakes begin in the Earth's crust. The crust is a layer of rocks that covers the Earth. It is 5 to 30 miles deep. Cracks in the rocks run through the crust. These are called fault zones. The rocks on one side of a crack can push against the rocks on the other side. The rocks may stay in place for years, but then they suddenly slide past each other. Here we can see a gigantic crack. Now I learned here that the crust is up from 5 to 30 miles deep, so that makes me wonder how deep this crack really goes. What makes the rocks move? The answer lies below. What makes the rocks move? The answer lies below the crust, in the mantle. The mantle is a 2,000-mile thick layer of melted rock. Over millions of years, movements in the mantle have cracked the crust into huge floating pieces called plates. These plates grind past each other at about 2 inches per year. That's about as fast as your fingernails grow. The layers of rock in this photo folded because of movements in the mantle. The San Andreas Fault lies between the North American and the Pacific plates. It runs for 700 miles through Southern California to just north of San Francisco. Each year, California has about 35,000 earthquakes. Most are too small to be felt. Less than 100 measure 4 or more on the Richter scale. And I remember from my reading yesterday that a 3 is where you can actually feel it. So if less than 100 or 4 or more, then that's it's not very many of the 35,000. This scared me at first, but then I found out most of them you don't even feel. Alaska has more earthquakes than any other state. Alaska has a magnitude 7 earthquake almost every year. Earthquakes also occur in the central United States. In 1811, an 8 plus quake shook the Mississippi Valley. So this is the Richter scale. This is the power. An 8 plus. Remember, the largest one ever is 9.5. So this is huge. An 8 plus quake shook the Mississippi Valley. It caused the church bells to ring in Boston, nearly 1,000 miles away. So this is a picture of Alaska, and I don't know if you can tell this was a road, and you can see where the stripes used to line up, but an incredible gap has opened in the middle of the road. The most violent earthquake ever recorded in the United States took place in Anchorage, Alaska in March 1964. The quake measured 8.4 on the Richter scale and 10 on the Mercalli scale. Cracks in the earth up to 30 feet wide opened like giant jaws. Nearby ports were completely destroyed by huge sea waves. More than 100 people died. So this is a picture from that. And again, we learned that 9.5 is the biggest ever recorded, most powerful. So this one in 1964 was very powerful. And remember, the Mercalli scale only goes up to 12. So there was an incredible amount of damage. That is where we are going to leave it today, kids. So once again, I hope your brain is thinking about just the main idea of what you read today. And if you're like me, you're probably going to go back and read it again.